Well, something is truly rotten in the state of Jerusalem in our reading today, because the one city that should be the most alive and aware of what's going on and following the star or being guided by it and finding the Christ child should be Jerusalem. And yet they seem to be completely ignorant that anything at all is happening. In fact, they're greatly disturbed by the news. Perhaps they're just embarrassed, or perhaps it's something worse, like they don't really want the Christ child to be born. They're content enough in their city. They don't need another king who's going to disrupt everything and maybe make life better for some, the poor, and make life worse for some, the rich, which of course we know eventually is supposed to be the great thing that happens with Christ, making all people equal and united. But the wise men come, they've had a long journey, and they find the Christ child. They are guided by that light, and in many ways they themselves are a part of the light. And if anyone wanted to, they certainly could have followed along with the wise men, with the Magi, in order to find Christ. But nowhere does Matthew say, once the wise men made their appearance, everybody in Jerusalem, or even a few people in Jerusalem, said, hey, why don't we join them and go to Bethlehem and see what there is to see? And even the king seems to think, well, it isn't significant enough for me to go look for him. You can tell me where he is, and when I get a chance, I'll go worship God. I don't suppose this attitude that the Jews in Jerusalem are having is so different sometimes from our own lives, when we seem to be too busy to find time to be with God. And in fact, in our church, perhaps the very people who are supposed to be the most Christ-like and knowing the best, maybe even the pastor, can sometimes be the ones who are the most oblivious to the things that God is doing. It's important to always understand that the voice that comes from outside, the strangers, like these wise men were, often can see things better than us who are in the midst of it. And we always need to listen to the thoughts and critiques and words that come from outside. Sometimes there's great truth in that, and we may not like to hear it. But ultimately, this isn't so much about whether or not we're growing and developing. It's about whether we are being what we need to be, which is a sign that we are excited about knowing Christ as well. And in fact, just the sign of wanting to find Christ is a path to help others find Christ. I'm sure for those who are Catholic and who go to, let's say, a public grammar school, and they talk about Jesus at the school, they might not get a lot of support. And one would hope if they go to a parochial school where they're learning about Jesus and excited about him, there's a lot more people involved in the discussion, which gives support and animation to the desire to deepen one's faith. In our own lives, of course, we want to know people who want to know Christ. It helps us believe that what we're doing really is important and matters. And we must remember, of course, that not only are we seeking Christ, but perhaps we're an example to others to help them seek Christ, as the three wise men were today, even though nobody followed their example. So first we have to realize, even if we want to be an example and want to know Christ, and nobody seems to follow our example, we still must do our path and follow Christ. However, even more perhaps is that we might actually be a light of Christ for others to help them find Christ. This should be one of the major visions and models of what it means to be the church. Anyone who might come in here tonight who is not Catholic might very well ask, well, where is Christ in your church? And I don't know if we all think we have an answer to that question. I think maybe some innocents might quickly point out the infant Jesus in our nativity scene over there and say, he's right here, which might be a nice answer to the question, where's Christ? But it wouldn't be the most profound one. And I hope it wouldn't be the one that most of us would ultimately say. We might say that Jesus Christ, of course, is contained in our tabernacle, and that's why we're all going to bow down and worship him there. It's a fair answer, but not the best one either. Christ is in our tabernacle, but he's not simply contained there where we get to visit him every now and then, or eat of his body and drink his blood. The church clearly says we are the body of Christ, and therefore every one of us here is an answer to the question, where's Christ in your church? You're standing in him. This is Christ. Don't you see it? This is what it means to walk and be the body of Christ. As a church right here on 11th Street in downtown Sacramento, or any other church building that we have, but even more in your own homes, in your dining room, in your kitchen, as you walk the streets and go shopping, as you work and meet other people, every one of them should not really have to ask, where's Christ for you? They should see it and know, when I meet you, I know Christ. I want to know him better. We are all called to be that light of Christ.